topic that we kicked off the day on, and now we're going to wrap it up with what we've been talking about really all day, which is collaboration. I'm very excited to welcome Luke Hohmann, actually from San Jose. He flew all the way down here to join us today. And Luke is the founder and CEO of Conteneo.co. And Conteneo, Luke, in his experience with Conteneo, works through understanding collaboration and actually empowering large-scale and small-scale teams to make decisions through using gameplay to do so. Luke's the master of science and play. He empowers organizations with merging serious games, data analytics, domain expertise, and collaboration to result in epic wins, which I'm sure we all like to have. So with that in mind, Luke, go ahead and come up on the stage.
I've noticed that this group has been pretty intimate, so I like that. I hope that you will feel that you can interrupt me and ask questions, because you're probably going, games, WTF? What's going on? How can we do this at work? And why would we do this at work? And what does that mean about collaboration? We'll talk about that. I love to field the hard questions, so try and think of some. So I want to talk about this word collaboration. We've been using it extensively, bending it interesting ways, called a spear. It's kind of cool. So let's talk about what collaboration is, and then we can talk about how games fit into that and why they might be, in fact, the ideal collaboration tool. What does it mean to have a game from a game theorist's standpoint, and how does that apply or impact collaboration? We'll maybe look at the games in action, and we'll talk about some of the accomplishments that we've been able to create through serious player, serious games. So if you, thank you Wikipedia. I should have added that this is from Wikipedia. If you look at what people think about when they talk about collaboration, it's really a much more complex topic than we think about, because it's a goal-directed activity. We get to use recursive, which is very cool in computer science, and soccer people like that. Wes likes that word, right, Wes? Wes, double thumbs up. Man, that's good. So when you look at what collaboration is about, it's about a certain kind of knowledge sharing. Now, here's a question for you. Are we collaborating?
Yes.
Are we?
Yes.
Kind of interesting, right? Because we've got a really large group. And it's hard to collaborate in a really large group because it's easy for small teams. Right? You sit down with your colleagues, right? And it gets harder and harder as we get bigger. So in this room, are we collaborating? If we were at, say, a larger conference with 2,000 people in the room, would we be collaborating? If we were at a conference with 25,000 people in the room, would we be collaborating? Right? So you start to think about, well, what's that meaning of collaboration? And why is it easy for small teams and so hard for big teams? And the reason it gets so hard is because we tend to mistake, and we tend to confuse communication with collaboration. And it's almost hilarious, because if you go to larger organizations, like if you go to Avaya or Alcatel or Cisco, they'll say, use our collaboration platform. But in reality, they're marketing unified communications and calling it collaboration. 1,000 people isn't a collaboration, it's a broadcast model. And that's not to say that communication isn't important. If you look at the evolution of productivity, and if you look at the evolution of what we can do when we have better communication technology, it's quite remarkable. We can mobilize more people more efficiently. Right? And a lot of that is driven by, of course, and at times sadly, by military warfare. But how did we communicate messages, or how did humans communicate messages that were secret and needed to get there fast in, say, the Roman times? You know how they used to do it? They used to shave the head of the slave, they used to tattoo it on the head, and then they sent it on their way. Because by the time they got through, the hair had grown back and they were protected. You knew that? No. So we mistake communication for collaboration. And communication is a part of collaboration, to be sure. But communication isn't collaboration. Now, that's a subtlety, but it leads into what might collaboration be as opposed to communication. And it turns out that games are an ideal collaboration tool. From a game theorist standpoint, a game has a goal, something we would like to achieve. And if you recall the definition of collaboration, it has a goal. Now, we also have rules. The rules are how we're going to work together. We have constraints, which are typically, and often surprisingly, the constraints are often arbitrary. And then there's voluntary participation. So we find it somehow. Now, what is not in the definition of a game that you might think would be if you heard the word, what's in a game? And when I teach classes in this, I'll say, what's a game? And people say, well, it has these qualities. But what quality is missing from the definition of the game? Pardon? Winning? There's no definition of winning here. It's just a goal. So that's often added. Bonus points to you. She gets a free cake tonight. Raising the roof. She's like, I'm out of here. But there's another word that's usually associated with this. Decisions. We make decisions in a game, right, to achieve your goal. Close. Have a drink.
Fun.
Who said it? Competition is about winning and fun. When you think game, you think fun, right? Hopefully, a little bit, maybe. This guy's like, not at all. Get off the stage. We think fun. But yet fun is not the part of the definition of the game that game theorists key on. Because fun is actually a constructive relationship that you have with a game. This one's going to be a little for parents, right? How fun is it for those of you in the room to play Chutes and Ladders? Come on, Isaac, you know you're cracking it out. Really? Oh, you're special. I myself do not think it's fun. Now, I actually enjoy playing Scrabble mostly because my wife lets me win just enough to keep me on the hook. Oh, what am I doing this time? So we'll play again. And then I'll dominate it. Crush it. With the winning, the competition that we talked about. Why is, and I don't know if y'all are 49er fans, I'm a 49er fan, that's watching. Why? Yay! So why is the football field 100 yards long? To make it even? Why not 200 yards long? Well, why is it too long? It's what?
Enough challenge so that it's not too hard and not too easy.
Right, because that is what creates what? What word did you say that is not up there? Because when it's not too hard and not too easy, perversely we think it's challenging, which is fun. If a football field was 30 yards long, would it be arena football? It didn't score 2,352. Right? Because it's not, it would be too easy, right? I mean, if it was 300 yards long, it wouldn't be fun for the spectators, who are actually part of the game. You think spectators aren't part of the game, but they are. They have an interaction in the field of play, in the space. So far, so good. So when you start to look at the kinds of work that we want to do in business, and of course we have to find a way to remove the word fun, because heaven forbid we have fun at work. We have to use words like engagement and empowerment. New words. Engage, empower. Ever go home? Hey, Dad, how was your day at work? I had a great day. Did you have fun? I had fun. What did you do? And you're like, oh, how do I explain fun to a 12-year-old? And yet you did have a great day at work, but you were engaged and you were enjoying yourself. And so in many aspects, the aspects of work that we love have the same element and feeling. And it's not just made up. They've done brain scan studies of 2 adults collaborating on a PowerPoint marketing presentations and 2 children building a Lego city, and guess what? They're the same. Same brain centers ignited, same feelings of satisfaction, same feelings of accomplishment, same feelings of satisfaction. But of course, one's okay, so one's not. Because one is game and one is work. And yet there's aspects of work that we do that we love. Now, the other element of game theory is that game theorists talk about finite games and infinite games. So finite games are games that we play that have typically a competitive element. They have a field of play, a way to keep score, a concept of winning and losing. So what would be finite games? I mentioned one already. Chess would be a finite game. Finite doesn't mean it's short, because chess could last for a long time, right? But it's got all of the qualities, right? There's goals, there's constraints, there's rules, there's voluntary participation, and there's a winner and a loser. So we have chess. What else? Super Mario Brothers. You gotcha. And there's thousands of games. Go to boardgeek.com and you can find 423,000 games and counting. Infinite games are, according to game theorists, games that we play to perpetuate play. There's no winner, there's no loser. We want to keep playing. If you're married well today, what do you get to be tomorrow? Married. If you're a good parent today, what do you get to be tomorrow? A parent. If you're in business today, serving your customers, and you do that well, what do you get to be tomorrow? Business. So you can actually construct business as a finite game where the moves that you make in business business is an infinite game where the moves that you make within your business are finite games in and of themselves that perpetuate playing in the infinite game. Now, why is this so? Why is this work? What's going on here? Well, all higher order species play, right? You've seen cats play. Why do cats play? Lions and tigers, why do they play? Does anyone know that? Anyone have animals? Cat play? See cat play?
Instinct.
No, not so much cats. Fish? What?
Instinct.
Instinct. But what's going on with the instinct? What's the purpose of the play?
Learning.
Pardon?
Learning.
Learning what?
Learning how to be cat.
Learning hey, cats. Learning how to, what do cats do in the wild? They hunt. What else do they do?
Fight.
They hunt and fight. What do they do when they play? Kind of hunt, kind of fight when they play, because they're learning how to be a cat. So what are we doing when we're teaching kids chutes and ladders and checkers and things like that? What are we doing as parents?
Quality time.
Quality time. So that's good, right? Well, that's part of what? What is quality time part of? Bonding. They've actually shown that children who are withheld play actually grow up with enormous, countless numbers of social problems and social dysfunctions. And irrecoverable ones because of the way the brain forms. What else are we teaching them when we play with our kids? To play together? Okay, Wes, it's your turn next. Okay, it's my turn, Wes. Sharing, socialization, turn-taking, how to deal with conflict, how to work together over a longer period of time, how to plan and sequence activities. And what happens is just keep building, right? By the way, I love it when some of the clients I work with are like, well, we don't play games in business. I'm like, really, you don't play games? I don't play games. Really? Hand me your iPhone. Who's that? Oh, that's my kids. Because what happens is they evolve, right? Strategy starts off as checkers, and it evolves into things like risk, and most of those are derived from military war games. And for thousands of years, the most exalted form of strategy was, in fact, the war game and simulation. And what happened in the 70s is we started with video games. And video games democratized the concept of play, democratized the concept of these strategy games. Therefore, we couldn't use them in business anymore. But But guess what? The military still uses video games all the time and military war games because of strategic thinking. If I move here and we do this and what's going on here, and how do you build those skills? You build those through play. So games have an amazing component. Now, this game, does anyone know what that game is? Anyone familiar with that game? Which one? It's either that or it's Settlers of Catan, a variation, right? Pardon?
You're right, Settlers.
That's okay. You still get a drink because you're talking. I'm cool with that. And heck, it's Isaac's pain, so you're all getting drinks. Two drinks. Yeah, really. Well, it's a marketing event. And so what happens, and by the way, you can find very different gaming cultures around the world, right? In America, we like Monopoly. I win, and I dominate everyone, and you all go bankrupt. Right? We play Settlers of Catan, and the way that you play, if you haven't played Settlers of Catan, the way that you play, if you play ruthlessly in Monopoly, you win. If you play ruthlessly in many of the games designed by people in other cultures, everyone loses, including you. There's much more subtlety in the formation and management of alliances, which can sometimes make the partnerships that we enter into at work very challenging, especially when we're trying to deal with multinational relationships and partnerships. The concepts of play, the concepts of future, the tenses of verbs, they all feed into this. Now, in business, we specialize at scale. The specialization at scale creates doldrums because we lose the goals, the interactions, and the constraints. We create things that don't allow us to come together. And that's what my company is trying to do. We're trying to attack this. We're trying to bring the concept of play into business so that we can solve these problems. So what kind of problems, what kind of challenges have we tackled through games? As you look at this list, I invite you to think, have I experienced one of these challenges at work? Challenges like prioritization is our number one verb of projects or features or technical debt. Getting an organization to align on values, not at, say, an 8-person when you can all come into a room, but what if you have 8,000 people? How do I get them to align on our corporate values? Roadmaps or release plans or negotiating scope and complexity. Large distributed team retrospectives. I've done a part of the Agile software movement for a long time. And in Agile software, we have this notion of a team conducting a retrospective. Anyone familiar with that? Retrospectives? No? Yes? Losing them? Okay, move on.
You just mean like at the end of the sprint or something?
Like at the end of a sprint, right? And you have a team of developers, they do a little meeting, and how can we improve? Well, that's great for the team, but what if you had, say, 50 teams or 100 teams, and that you wanted to actually have the organization improve? We've been helping organizations do 500, 800-person retrospectives. And here's the trick. When you look at human collaboration, humans in general do not collaborate in group sizes larger than 8. It's a really interesting rule. Now, there's a couple of theories about how that rule develops, but in general, you can hold that rule constant. It's been studied since about the 20s in organizational behavioral literature. And if you look at organizational structures, we're kind of all built on units of 8. And so what we do with our gaming platforms is we design collaborations to have 8. Now, that's the distinction sometimes between a collaboration and a broadcast. You can broadcast to an arbitrarily large number of people, which is important when you're disseminating information or you have to get status updates out or etc. But when you want to do true work together, it's small group size at scale. So here's an example of one of our platforms, one of our games. It's called Buy a Feature. You take 12 to 20 items, and they could be projects in a project portfolio. They could be features in your product backlog or things that you might want to do. And you describe them in cost. And the cost could be an estimate or it could be the actual cost. You give 5 to 8 players roughly 40 to 60% of the money of the total, and you give it evenly to the player. So do the math. I've got $20 million total in projects. Take 40% of that, that's $8 million. So far, so good. And if I have 8 players, each player gets 1 million. And then the rule of the game is simple. Buy what you like. Oh, if you don't have enough money, you have to convince other people to join you. So it's not competitive, it's collaborative. Wes, you got to get the flibble bobber with me. It's going to be awesome. And then Isaac like, Wes, don't get the flibble bobber, get the Gleeble. It's better. Here's why. And we're building up, as opposed to tearing down, a collaborative way to choose our project portfolio or our features. You can do this internally to get a sense of what your sales team or your developer team might want. You can do this externally to see what your customers want. Grunt once for yes, twice for no if you're following me. Or just put your head down, it's okay. Huh? Now, the interesting thing about this is that, let's say you had 8,000 people that you wanted to do this with. Well, we know that 8,000 people don't collaborate, but 8 do. So what do we do with 8,000 people? We run, do the math, 1,000 games. And then we do what geeks love to do, is we take all the event data and all the results and we put it into a data warehouse and we grunge it up. And we look at who purchased what, how much did they bid from the intensity, who negotiated with who, were they either solo purchased, were they collaboratively purchased, what did they say to convince other people? Because what they said are conditions of acceptance and reasons for the priorities, the negotiations that go along with what's going on. And how did this shape my project? So I get 3 things from this process, which I don't get in traditional forms of interaction. I get my priorities, but I get the reasons why, and I get the conditions of acceptance. And there's also some really interesting things that happen in the brain. Let's say that I'm negotiating with Wes, and Isaac is negotiating with Wes to get the flibble bobber. And we talk it over, and finally we all agree we're going to put our money into it. And what happens is, we put our money into it, and we have a feeling of success. That feeling of success releases what chemical in the brain? Dopamine. Oh, I love it. Man, these people are good. You're in Cali. It's awesome. Right? So we release a little hit of dopamine in the brain because we worked together to get a project that was hard fought. What that did is it cements it as a project that's good. So what we do in business is we shorten the implementation time by increasing the involvement with organizations and our employees. Following the sequence? So we're using a little bit of dopamine and a little bit of behavioral economics and a little bit of collaboration to figure out not only what people want, but when they're done, what they're really after. Now, it doesn't always work out that way, right? Because sometimes you might, and this is a project we did at VeriSign. They gave us 46 projects, 200 employees that are located around the world, and they wanted to prioritize their project portfolio. Sally Peterson, the senior vice president at VeriSign, said, you know, Luke, I know how I would do this in the traditional way. I'd sit down with my 8 directors and we'd make the call. But I really want to get my global team involved. I've got to move faster. Could we try this, online? Yes, of course. And we did a calibration meeting with her team. And her team had a project that was really important, first thing purchase, because we mapped time of purchase and a few other things. And their project was way out there. You'll notice that none of the employees picked it. Sally came to me, what do I do? I said, well, clearly, the thing that you thought as a leader was so obvious to your employees is not so obvious. If you think you need to do this, then be a leader and lead. And there's research out of Wharton last year that talks about how collaborative decision-making still needs leaders to lead when the going gets tough. So I said, lead, but you have to educate why. And so they put in an education program. Now, they did pick these, but they did this one way out here. And they put an education program. They feel that they figured out how to communicate what was going on. We looked at the chat logs. We looked at why people didn't understand it. And we made a communication program. And they felt that they saved 3 months. Now, this is a company, the logo's not here, but is anyone familiar with a company called bwin.party? They do brands Party Culture or Cheeky Bingo. It's not really well known in America because online gambling with real money is not legal in most states. But in Europe, it's mostly legal. So they're $1 billion revenue firm that does real money gambling, or what they would call real money gaming. And in this project, I want to point out that what we did was we did 2 teams with the leaders, And we did 4 teams with their extended leaders, and we could see that there was perfect overlap. But down here in Phoenix, you can see that the leaders wanted to do Phoenix Phase 2, but only one of these teams wanted out. But down here on this innovation project, none of the leaders wanted to do it, but all of the distributed teams wanted to participate. We grunged it out. The leaders said, you know what? By reading the chat logs and understanding what people are talking about, they're right. We should not do Phoenix Phase 2, and we should do the innovation project. So you can see the alignment working both ways. Now, we put our stuff to the test. Karlsruhe Institute of Technology is kind of like the MIT of Germany. And we've done comparisons with traditional forms, i.e. non-game-based ways to prioritize portfolios, like pure ROI, right? Which, of course, we all know is extremely truthful. No one does ROI in your company, right? No one fudges those numbers. You wouldn't think it. You wouldn't game that system, now would you? And what we found, and this is slide got a little washed out, but what we found was that we said, did you feel involved and did you find the process enjoyable? And wait, we got 100% enjoyment using a game. That was even better than what we expected when we did the research with them. Even better than we expected. Because of how incredibly natural it is to engage in games. Now, by the way, if you go to work and you don't think that your environment would support games, don't call it a game. Call it a goal-driven, facilitated discussion with rules and constraints that produce actionable insights. And then people will be all over it. Because that's what it is. Hey, now the last thing I'm going to close with is, I started, 5 years ago, I was on a plane from San Jose, California to Dallas, Fort Worth. And the woman sitting next to me was Kim Walash. She is the head of economic strategy for the city of San Jose. Now, guess what I'm going to tell you about? You're sitting on a plane right with me for 3.5 hours. Right. So, we start talking, and what do you do? And I do this for San Jose. And I said, oh, this is what I do. And I said, does San Jose, have you really started to try and reach out to your citizens? Oh, yeah, the mayor has this program where we're trying to get budget priorities. Oh, we do that. We can solve that problem. Oh, no, you can't. No, yeah, actually, we can. Oh, you don't understand, Luke. Government is so much different than business. And really trying. She's like, well, we have a lot of people. We have a lot of people that we serve, but a loud number of very small voices, or a small number of very loud voices. Now, you guys don't have that in your businesses, right? And I said, okay. And she said, we've got to get people to align on the priorities, and it's really hard to get them to align on the priorities. And you guys don't have that problem, right? So I said, look, we can do this for you. So we can do this. And it was in 2010, they invited me to observe their process, and it was just horrifically bad. They gave citizens a pack of nickels, and they had 5 budget priorities of the city, like parks and rec, and they were supposed to put your nickels into the bin that you wanted, and the smart citizens just kept them, because there was just nothing you were going to do, right? So what we designed is a very carefully structured program that is built on by a feature called the budget games. And in the budget games, we gave the citizen green sheets. Green sheets are what you could buy with money. Red sheets are how you get money. So you can get money by raising taxes or cutting programs, and green sheets are what you can buy. Now, this is a photo from this January. This is about 120 citizens in San Jose City Hall. By the way, 4 years of work. I like to say we're a small company with a big heart. We've given over $1 million of pro bono services to the city. And in this room, there's about 40 innovation games facilitators, all coming in on their own dime, some from as far as Europe, so that we can bring this technique to other cities around the world. And this is what it looks like online. It's kind of washed out, but the kinds of things that we're asking citizens to tackle are, would you rather have police officers, library hours, pavement maintenance, or anti-gang funding? Because those are the choices that we have to figure out how to make. And if we can't figure out how to make these choices in a humane way, they're going to be made for us in a very inhumane way. Because Western democracies are broke. And if we can't get a handle on this somehow, some way, we're not going to make it. And if you don't think gameplay is important, consider this. Millennials entering the workforce have played more video games than watched TV for the first time ever. They are expecting to use games at work. And if we don't meet them on their terms, we're going to lose them forever. So this is an example of some of our philanthropic work. So, best practice. Integrate games play into your work. You don't have to call it a game, but it will have all of the qualities that you need to create epic wins. And I have no idea what time it is, but I'm at your service if we have a few minutes. What time is it? How to do?
Good, 10 minutes left.
All right. Any questions? Any things people want to look at? Isaac throws his hand up.
What are some examples of gameplay working against you?
Against me?
Yeah, it's always positive, right? So, does it ever get too competitive that the system and the people participating break down or get too frustrated or something?
So everyone heard it. The question is, are there situations where the games have become too competitive or the system breaks down in ways that are potentially irrecoverable? Well, the way to answer that question, and this is by the way, leads into the hard part about comparing games outside of work and games at work. There's a part of the definition of a game that's really tricky for work. What is it? Voluntary participation, right? I choose to try and hit a ball in a hole with a club for no other reason than I'm crazy. Right? At work, there's less of a notion of voluntary participation, so that's when the game notion gets tricky at work. Now, a specific example of this is, and if you guys think that, or if you guys don't think that senior executives do not play games, I can give you examples and case studies that would probably floor you. So last June, Daimler Financial Services, which is the $100 billion in asset bank of Mercedes-Benz, assembled all 140 of their top leaders for a 3-day meeting in Warsaw, Poland, with 1 day devoted to gameplay that we produced. And the goal was, in the beginning of the day, reprioritize a 181 million euro IT budget. And the definition of the games that I've been talking about, things like Scrabble, those are fun games. The definition of the serious game is the outcome of the game materially affects the players. So when you're playing the game at San Jose, for example, those citizens play very vigorously because it could be your neighborhood where the library is cut. So sometimes what happens is the stakes, when they are very high, it can be very, very tense. So I don't know if it works against us, it just makes it viscerally real. I had one situation once where a person who was invited to play chose not to play, and that's okay too. But nothing that I would call like an absolute fail.
Are there certain areas of the business where the process works better than others? Like, the product roadmap is always contentious because lots of sort of cooks in the kitchen versus strategic planning or positioning for the whole company.
Right. So the question is, are there some areas of the business that tend to work better than others? And an example would be road mapping. We actually have games designed for road mapping. So road mapping is definitely within our sweet spot. Brand and brand positioning, that's a little bit out of our sweet spot. I'm not going to assert that you can't have games in that area, but we haven't designed games for that area. We have designed games for corporate strategic decision making and solving wicked problems. I didn't cover those games here. It's, if you want to look at it, it's strategy-engine.com. But I would say there are some areas of the business that that are more amenable to games. And by the way, I don't want you to walk away thinking that everything that you do is a game, right? If you can, for example, let's say you want to attack a new market and you want to know, is this market big enough? That's not a game. That's just doing your homework. Go do your secondary research. Go do your primary research. Do your market sizing. Do your analysis. Run your numbers. And if you can get the answer through what would be called rational techniques, that's great, right? I mean, if you can, back it up, that's great. You tend to want to use these kinds of techniques when the rational techniques break down. I'll give you another example. For those of you who manage project portfolios or backlogs for products, here's your list of stuff to do. I usually organize it conceptually in thirds. The top third is, I'm going to do this. I don't need to be told to do it. I don't need to ask anyone about it. I just know I'm going to do it. And the bottom third those are my keepers. I'm not sure I'm going to do it yet, but I'm not going to do it right now. I just keep them around. It's the mushy middle that people tend to start to get into dysfunctions about. Like, well, if I tweak this number, the ROI looks a little better and it goes up. When that happens, that's where we kind of kick in, for example, in prioritization. There was a question over here. A hand?
Yeah, I was going to say, when it comes to participation, say in some of your games, how do you deal with someone who doesn't want to participate?
If they don't want to participate, we say you don't have to. So, for example, in the San Jose games this year, there was one table. The specific games that Mayor Reed asked us to tackle this year in San Jose, and I think it was this table right here. What the city wanted us to test was raising the sales tax by 1/4 cent to produce $34 million in revenue, or a 1/2 cent to produce $68 million in revenue. So the way we constructed the game is half the tables in the room and half the games online were given $34 million, and here's the list of items, buy what you want. And the other half were given $68 million, here's the list of items, buy what you want. And one table sat back and said, we're not going to do this. So I walked over, I'm one of the roving facilitators, and the facilitator at the table called me over and they said, they don't want to play. I said, that's great, you don't have to play. So, but keep in mind that you're in a democracy. So if this goes to the ballot, and your fellow citizens voted in with the 2/3 or whatever majority you needed to get this involved, you've lost your ability to give input in how you would spend the money. So we understand that you personally don't support raising taxes. However, this is a form of getting your feedback on what you would do. And then they said, oh, if that's the case, then we'll play. But I would strongly recommend that if people elect not to play, they don't have to, or they shouldn't be forced to. Okay, I cannot leave a room with these many people and this quiet. So this is what you're going to do. You know how to play rock, paper, scissors?
Yes.
One. Okay, so this is the way this works. You're going to find a partner, and you're going to play rock, paper, scissors. The winner will find another winner and compete. The losers cheer their winners as loud as they can. Go. You've got 2 minutes to have 2 champions. Stand up and go, 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 go. that they figured it out, and you figured it out with the Department of Rules. And I'll give you this last anecdote. The Java community process started used by a feature to prioritize this backlog of requirements in the community. But they misread the instructions, and they gave everyone all of the budget. So everyone could buy everything. And they started to do the game, and there's this great blog post by the guy who runs the Java community process. He was like, it was so unfun. And then when someone said, well, why don't we make it hard for ourselves to talk, so we'll give away all of our money. And so they voluntarily figured out how to play the game so that they could have an interesting conversation at work and still accomplish this, just like you did. So well done. See ya.